Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It's the 26th of August, 2024. Nothing more exciting than talking about the weather. But I have to say, we've had two consecutive really wet winters. And I've been here since I took 4 or 5 years to go back to Florida, but pretty much been here since 1988, which is a while. And this is the mildest summer that I think we have ever had. I don't think it broke 100 once. Usually, by the time we get to June, it's in the hundreds, and it'll stay there till September. But honestly, I don't know. I know the rest of the country is. It's just something about the weather in California is completely different. But it's been great. Like for us, it's 100 and like I said, it's expected to be 100 plus for 3 months. And I remember a couple of years ago when our power went out, it was 116, and that was enough to knock the power out for 3 days. Anyway, I know that's pretty riveting, but it's a nice break. So let me see here. Colony stuff would be neat. Yes, actually, when we talk about that a little bit, I had a discussion with a guy, a friend of mine, who's, guess what, leaving California. I know it's shocking to hear, but he was a special effects guy on on everything. A lot of work on Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica. A couple of others, and he's heading to Tennessee, but we talked a lot about a bunch of things. One of the things that's really just it's not even it's just there, I guess, but this AI revolution is happening so fast, we just almost don't know what to do about it. I should have prepared this in advance, but I hadn't thought about it because I didn't realize it would come up. I'm going to grab something and download it real quick and show you guys, because we did, a couple weeks, several months ago, we did the whole Pookie Park thing, where this first generation of AI generated videos were just unbelievable. And I don't know if you guys have seen the Will Smith eating spaghetti. That was the difference in 1 year is astonishing. But I just want to show you one thing that I just saw recently, and it's here. It is. Give me a second just to download this. It won't take but an instant. I'll just drop it into both of those things here, because this is basically it's a science fiction thing. But the main thing is the people, specifically the women, are just. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so beautiful in my life. Well, with the exception of my wife, of course. That goes without saying, ladies. But honestly, you just need to take a look at this, because what it's doing is phenomenal. And I didn't know even a year ago if it was even possible for AI video to be anything other than hallucinogenic nightmare. But in the space of 1 year or less, in a lot of cases, it's just broken out. So let me play this for you, and then I'll tell you what some of the challenges are when it comes to the colonies as the state of the art is right now. Because things are just moving really, really fast. And I had a long talk with my friend Jeff. I mentioned Jeff Marks about this. Hang on, it's almost done. Download, you swine. Why did it stop? Do it again. There we go. Okay, so let me just pop this over here. Make sure I got the right one. Yeah. Okay, so once again, the problem is it takes me a second to drop it into both streaming platforms. So let me pop it into YouTube first. It's only about 2 minutes, but just take a look at this. So it's a like a retro future thing, but the faces are mind-boggling. This is the world I wanted to grow up in. Hoi. I just delete that so the sound goes away. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. What's what's that actually mean? Well, there's a couple things on the AI front. The challenge for the colonies and the possibilities for the colonies are. I've described it like this before. It's like we've been working on CGI computer graphics with things like the metahumans and motion capture suits and stuff, and been working on this honestly. I mean, just at the industry for 25 years, and now we're getting to the point where those things are. The metahumans are okay, but when you texture map a person's face, we're getting very, very. It's all about people. It's no problem faking out things about hard surface things like spaceships and stuff. Those have looked good for a long time, but the humans, where the problem is with the uncanny valley, it's like CG's been just crawling along for 30 years and almost gotten there, and at the last second somebody just fired this pistol, and video AI has come out. Now those faces were idealized, needless to say. Boy, were they idealized. But they looked photographed. They looked absolutely real. So even in the space of a year from the time we started showing some of those things, like I said, like Pookie Park and all the rest of that hallucinogenic nightmare fuel, the images have come a long way. So the problems in terms of making an actual full-length movie are, first of all, the CG the AI videos have to, first of all, get rid of that hallucinogenic shift where the AI is just making up images. I've already seen demonstrations where you can make a character, just you get a face or something that you like, and that you can basically lock that down, and then you can put that character into different prompts and different background scenes. That's a big step, where they manage to retain their their overall shape. When they can do that with gear, that'd be cool too, because the AI filmmaking doesn't know where the world is. CGI has a 3D structure. What the computer is doing when it renders something in CGI is it is recreating essentially a real world with points in actual space. AI imaging, on the other hand, has no depth perception. It can fake depth perception, but it doesn't know. It knows a wide shot from a near shot. It knows what a city street looks like because it has access to millions, if not billions, of photographs of a city street. And it's able to go and find those. What it does is, if you tell it you want to do New York Street in the 1950s, it'll go and look at millions of images of New York Street in 1950. Now, when you say look at it, the AI is not looking at anything. It doesn't have eyes. It can't see anything. What it's doing is it's looking at a series of ones and zeros that have been labeled New York Street, and it's able to look at those ones and zeros, and then it's able to basically memorize that little snatch of what it finds in the first one. Then it goes on to the next image, and it looks for a sequence of ones and zeros that looks similar to the ones and zeros in the one before, and then over time, it gets enough of these sequences, because again, it can't see and it can't really think. It's basically just pulling these things together and assembling a new series of ones and zeros that has high level of similarity to the data snips that it's already done before. And that's impressive and getting much more impressive. But you're still basically telling it something like, a busy New York street in the rain. It's nighttime. Neon signs are reflecting off the the glistening wet roads. 1940 cars are in the background, and we see the flare of headlights as a silhouette of a tall woman in high heels is walking across the street. That kind of thing. And then you've got one shot, but despite the phenomenal image quality, it doesn't understand things, and it doesn't have permanence. And what Jeff said was it's making up every single frame all over again. Now, with what you saw, obviously it's got an image, and then it's just doing iterations on that image where you design one face, and then you do a push on it, and it turns slightly. But basically, it has to start from scratch pretty much on every frame. So if you tell it to remember a character, it'll remember that sequence of ones and zeros and insert that little snippet into whatever scenes you decide to prompt for the background. But when it comes to things like, especially when it comes to things like science fiction, it doesn't. I've got, for the colonies, I've got in my possession, I've got probably 200 or 300 CG models. And when you get a talented 3D artist, like the guy who made the Armstrong, for example, I could never, ever get that design. As I sit here in 2024, anyway, I could never get the design like that out of an AI image. And even if I could, when it came time to rotate it, it doesn't know what to do with the rotation, because it doesn't know what the thing looks like. The CGI, on the other hand, does know what it looks like because it's got representations of the various points on the model in virtual 3D space. So you're left with, to me anyway, is to try and put together a combination of the two. Now, even as little as 2 years ago, and still continues. It seems like the smart thing to do, and I've played these videos before. I don't have them available now. I'm not going to get them. But basically, MetaHumans is the Unreal Engine people, and under certain lighting conditions, they're not bad, but they're not photoreal. But what I have seen, and by the way, the software will do this live, is they will then take the CGI character and deep fake a face onto it. So if it's me talking, I want to deep fake Tom Cruise's face over mine, then it'll do this live. It's got thousands of pictures of Tom Cruise. It knows every one of his expressions from various angles, and then it looks at each frame of me, matches the closest frame it can of Tom Cruise's expression, puts that over my face, and then makes the lighting on the face appear to be the same. And I've seen it where they're just changing the lighting constantly, and the deep fake is keeping up, and it's perfect. It's perfect. But there are, even then, on the tests that we're doing, we're running into problems because it is essentially gluing that layer over the very top of the frame. So I got a CG background, I got CG characters, I got a CG spacesuit, and everybody's walking along, and everything's fine. And I've got a metahuman head on the inside, but the deep fake is putting a real face on the outside, and it looks freaking perfect. It's perfect. It's photoreal. But that deep fake's head is being glued onto the surface of the image, if you want to think of it that way. And so the problem is, we haven't been able to figure out a way yet for it to do a deep fake image inside a space helmet. And that's a major problem, because the space helmet is on a layer that's closer to the camera than the deep fake is. It could put a deep fake face over the helmet, like a decal of Tom Cruise over the helmet, but we can't get it yet to do that. So now the cop out, and it's an unacceptable cop out, especially given how much stuff takes place in a vacuum in the colonies. The easy way out of this is to, I mean, it's just so cheap, it's just terrible. You just put a reflective covering on the thing, and you never see the guy's face. That's not an option. The very first tests I did for the colonies had a mirror reflection because I just didn't have the means to animate the face. Dave Big Booty says, can you just put a helmet over the face? No, see, that's the thing. The helmet is a 3D object that exists in 3D space. The metahuman inside there is also a 3D object that exists inside 3D space. All of the rotations and everything are perfect because it is a 3D artificial virtual world where everything has a location and has points in XYZ space. I put the deep fake over the face, but if I put the helmet on top of that, then it's just really hard to explain why that isn't working. Other than to say, maybe the best way to think of it, instead of saying that it puts a deep fake on top, it's probably fair to say it does the deep fake last. It takes a look at the completely rendered 3D frame, and then it'll find the part of that that's the metahuman face, and it'll just pop the deep fake on top of that. What the potential for this is phenomenal. Like I said, I've seen before and after slide wipe comparisons of a metahuman character which looks okay, not bad, against a metahuman character that's having it's done live. It's called live fake, I think, and it's exactly what we want. I mean, it's everything we need, and it's inexpensive, and it's been there for 1.5 years, 2 years now. But getting the helmets is a bitch. It's just really hard. One possibility, at least at the moment, assuming that it comes through or not. Hang on. Yeah, Marisha says, here's how you solve it. Make one rendering without the helmet, then render the helmet and put it on top. The problem is when you rendered the helmet, the visor is clear. And since the visor is clear, you see the back of the helmet. And so you put the back of the helmet on top of the deep fake, you've got it sits on top of the deep fake. That thought had occurred to me. So, I mean, we've tried a bunch of things, and we've even tried basically taking the deep fake face, putting that inside the 3D suit as a cardboard cutout that's in motion, and then looking through the helmet. And that works for the... what I'm basically saying is you're basically going to put a TV screen inside the helmet, and the TV screen has the deep fake face on it. That can be done. But then whenever you turn or you make any kind of change, you've got that flat plane, and it's a bear. It's just a bear. So, yeah, and people are saying slice the helmet in half. It just doesn't work that way, guys. It's just... it's difficult to explain, but it just doesn't. Now, one thing you could do is you could, and this is the road we're looking at. If you photo scan a face, the metahuman skin texture is obviously predetermined, but we're looking at real head scans. This is where they go in at 8K and scan not only the contours of your face, but actual people's faces, not make up people like metahumans. Metahumans get to age the skin and do all these other things, but these things are photographic captures, and they're very, very, very good, very good. And so one possibility is to, they're very, very good. One possibility is to basically say that you would do the deep fake of the characters anytime the helmet is off. And when the helmet is on, you would go to, I don't want to call it a metahuman face because it's better than a metahuman face. You would go to the three-dimensional photo scanned head and light it in such a way that it was close enough, because the helmet is providing some cover, right? You don't want a fully reflective visor, but all visors are going to have some kind of reflection. If you increase the reflection a little bit, you get the reflection of the 3D world in the visor, which actually looks cool, and it puts enough of a like a tint, like a screen, puts enough of a screen over the non-deep fake face to sell it. And that's the road that we've been playing with lately. I'd have a bunch of tests about this by now. This is one of these things that is just I don't even know what to say about it. So there's a place called on the web called 3D Scan Store, and I haven't seen anybody that's the match of them. I just want to cut and paste this comment real quick here for future use. Okay. So 3D Scan Store is fantastic. They've got three-dimensional heads. All the contours are scanned. All of the details, they're down to the pores. I mean, they're really terrific head models. They're absolutely fantastic. We haven't had the means to scan our own people. And this is the thing. I don't know where they're located. They're located in Europe. They may be in Holland, I want to say, perhaps. And they've got probably 50 heads that are rigged, ready to go for metahumans. Everything is perfect except for the fact that because these people are in Holland, these are the strangest looking human beings you have ever seen in your life. These people are well, they're weird is what they are. I have to show you a picture because it's like the most incredible asset in the world. Now, would you please just scan some Americans? Because all of these people just look so frighteningly inbred that I really just have to show it to you so you can see it. it's really it's really kind of amazing. Let me just see if I can grab a just a screen grab and show you, you know, because if they weren't so bloody weird, we'd be good to go. Okay, I'll just grab one of these. I just find one that give you the full. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, this'll do. So these are the head scans, and they look terrific, and they are terrific. And when you get close to them, they work great. But look at what you got here. This is a like a collection. Yeah, look at this. It's going into YouTube for a second. Oops. Let's try this. There we go. Hang on there, Twitch. What am I supposed to do with these faces? I mean, I don't know what to do with these faces, and they're all like this. They're all like this. Look at that bottom right-hand corner and tell me what that is. There's nobody I can use here, and every single one of these things, every single one of their collections, they've got probably 50 heads. I bet you there's 2 or 3 that I could use, and I'm not in love with them. They're okay. So it's really a question of well, we just haven't had the opportunity or really the means yet to do this. But what I think, what I'll probably do is do a test with these 3D scans. But see, I can't do the deep fake off of them because I don't have the source pictures for. Look, there is a solution for this, and here's how the solution works. Let me just take these images out of here. This is good old-fashioned nightmare fuel here. So the solution to our problem as it stands now would be to do this. We would probably hire models because they don't have to be actors. They really don't. We're not using them for acting at all. We would basically cast the models, human models, like runway models, that kind of model, not a 3D model or a miniature or anything. So we would basically go out there and find, let's say for the sake of the homesteader family, you got mom and dad and sis and bro. Okay, so we'd go out and find the face that we thought was the best face for dad. And then we would have the face 3D scanned, which gets the topography. It's completely uniform lighting because you don't want any lighting on the capture. All the lighting's going to be applied in whatever environment. If you have them a 3D environment, you move them into red light, then the red light will. So you want perfectly uniform lighting, and there are a bunch of companies that will do this. And we would 3D scan the person's face and their contours and their textures. We get their skin texture. We get all of that. That would become the 3D model, and then that same person, presumably while they're in the same cube, we would just have to have them talking and moving their head and doing all the expressions they can possibly do. We take that film footage, and we'd feed that into the deep fake learning algorithms, because then it would know how to recreate that face, so that for anything that's not wearing a spacesuit, we would go with the direct deep fake. But if we were going to do something inside the helmet, we wouldn't be using deep fake, but we'd be using a CG digital character who looked so close that I don't think you could tell them apart between the behind the helmet visor. In fact, I'm sure you couldn't tell them apart. I just don't have the ability to do both of them. So I think probably what I'll do is start concentrating on doing, and I don't want to do any of this for Major Mace Mattingly, by the way. I like the fact that those characters look exactly the way they do. and I just love them. I don't know how the hell we're going to cast real people that are going to get as close to what I'd like, but you get the idea. Yeah. Darth Chuck the Merciless says you want 200 Americans, just get them to come to Vegas. I know I only showed you one picture, so you got to believe me when I tell you that there are probably 20 of those collections, and all of these people look like birds or eggs. They all look like either potatoes or birds, and it's tough. But there is a solution to this. It's an expensive solution. Getting a head scan done is thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's not just that. You've got to cast the actors or the models. I mean, an actor will be fine. It's just he's not going to do any acting, at least presumably not. The acting is done by professional actors who are wearing the facial motion capture stuff, and they are. It's helpful if they look as close to the characters as possible. It makes the mapping onto the CG characters and the deepfake work a little better. But you got a lot of latitude in there. It's a real tech challenge, and one of the I've been in discussions with Daily Wire about this. Although Daily Wire's plate is completely full at the moment. They've got the Pendragon trilogy, and then they picked up the Snow White thing, which I think is a brilliant move. They're racked right now. So we're using Major Mace Mattingly as a proof of concept thing for everything except for the deepfakes. To get the flow for all of that stuff. So it's a very exciting time. New software is coming out all the time. It's the software that exists is getting better and better and better. The AI stuff is probably not going to be working for us in the foreseeable future. It's weird because deepfake precedes what I'm calling AI imagery by about a year or two. And when you see that working, it's really, really good. It's a lot of technical problems. While he was here, I showed him Dias for Dungeon, which I haven't seen in a year. And somebody in the comments section said, I think it was Marusha, said that the key to everything is the eyes. So for Dias for Dungeon, which if you're relatively new to the show here, was something I did almost 2 years ago now, I guess, with Alfonso Rachel, and it was like a proof of concept, 15-minute self-contained animated feature. I basically did that by myself, Zoe's voice, but I acted out Zoe's parts. Now, in that case, we were half cheating. We had helmets on our faces the whole time, because I just didn't have the resources to do the lip syncing. But Zoe would record his lines, I'd record my lines. Then we'd play those lines back, and I would do the performances for both characters. But it looks really, really, really good. And the reason it looks good, and Jeff pointed out when I showed it to him just a couple days ago, the reason it looks so good is because I did almost all of the acting with the eyes, and all of the metahuman stuff that I've seen so far, and some of it is pretty good. I think with maybe one exception, they're not acting with their eyes. Both of us have just essentially slits in our helmets, and so I knew that I had to make everything work with the eyes, and it works. There's like one scene in particular I remember where Zoe's character goes walking by, and my character's kind of pissed off, and I'm sitting there, and I just kind of look up, and I turn my head and look at him go, and when you see the eyes come up and move, it's It's perfect. It's perfect. I've never run that on Bill Whittle channel. I've only run it on the Stratosphere Studio channel that had 500 subscribers at the time. You know, I'm so tempted to do it. I feel a little awkward about it, but I mean, it's finished. It's been finished for 2 years. The music's in there. Everything looks great. So you know, it's a lot. It was a lot to do. That one I did essentially 100% on my own, with the exception of Zoe's voice. I did all of the acting. I did all the. I'm very, very, very happy with the direction, the way it was directed. I selected all the music from, you know, like from audio libraries that are available in Unreal Engine, and I thought it was really terrific. But it was fantasy. Bill, let's talk to Benny Johnson. DJ CJ, sorry. His staff has access to some pretty damn good AI that does characters pretty well. One of the things, yeah, Quibo says you should be focusing more on your animation, less on politics. That is the question right now. To be honest with you, there are many times when I just say I'm just spinning my wheels. I just need to get on this just full time. Well, I've got I've just got to do both. That's all there is to it. What I really would like, obviously, is is a small actual studio. With a small actual studio, I could do Tappy 3. Because Tappy 3 is pretty straightforward. Tappy 3 is largely hard body animation. You know, a battleship or a destroyer looks really, really good, really good. I mean, I saw Tom Hanks' movie Greyhound a couple of years ago. That's all done with CG, and it looked as good as any. It's a feature film, for God's sakes. You know, look great. But the problem is it's just tough to do it. Bill, you are seated in a small actual studio. When I say a small studio, Colonel Angus, I'm not talking about floor space. I'm talking about personnel. I can't tell you how just how much work there is to do. Just to rig and texture, like even like a rover or something. It's days and days just to do one really good CG asset. Now, once you've done it, you've got it, but it's just it's a monstrous amount of work. Which leads me to believe that it's getting to be time to do the sizzle reel for the crowdfunding. Just give up on politics and animation and concentrate on flying your plane. I don't have a plane. What may end, I'll tell you who I do want to talk to is I'd like to talk to Angel Studios about this. Because I knew Dallas Jenkins from back in the day, but I haven't seen him in 10 years. But what they've done over there is phenomenal. And yeah, I'll I hope to make the colonies look as good as Polar Express. Polar Express is always going to be the brown standard by which all Uncanny Valley effects will follow. It is the most dead-eyed, frightening, horrible nightmare that I've ever seen. So that brings up the question of crowdsourcing. You know, the golden days of crowdsourcing is well behind us, but it's the way I see it is you almost have to do like two of these things. You have to do one. You have to do one to get enough money to really show what you can do. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say exactly how much it would cost. But anyway, I have been giving thought to that too. So we basically have 5 stories, and I've got clearly blocked out the a sizzle reel that would show 3 or 4 minutes from each one of the 5 stories, and I know exactly what those scenes would be. The probably the best thing I could do, to be honest with you, is to write the pilot. Don't talk to Angel Studios, talk to Dallas. Angel Studios is no longer associated with The Chosen. I didn't know that. It's like RKO telling the original distributor for being the original distributor for Walt Disney cartoons. I did not know that relationship. I really did not know that. I've not been closely following Angel Studios or anything, but I will say that The Chosen is phenomenal. I mean, The Chosen is actually a really good example of what can be. I mean, in many ways, it's the definitive example of what could be done. But the reason that The Chosen was the success that it was, they had a fundraising for the first season, and they did their first season, and the second season subscription, what they needed was filled within a day or a couple of hours, because his first season was so bloody good. That show is so well cast and so well written and so well acted that it's just some of the best television I've ever seen. And I haven't sat down and watched all of it, but I've seen a large number of clips from it, a lot of clips from it. And the actor they got for Jesus is not who you would stereotypically think of, which is one of the reasons why he works so well. That guy is a superb actor, and he's such a good actor. I don't even think he's acting. It's like I don't see an actor there. He is Jesus, and Dallas was really smart in a lot of ways. First of all, he cast the disciples as much younger than I would have cast them, but he's much closer to the truth. These were young men who were following him around, young men, and they're not. And this is the most important thing, right? This is the singular reason why the Chosen works so well, and that is there's not a pretty person in it. You know, there's not one pretty person in the entire movie. And everybody looks authentically Semitic, and but he made Jesus just really warm and natural. You know, lots of laughter and smiles, and still that actor has just such charisma and strength. I mean, it's not lost on Dallas, not lost on me or anybody else. If you're going to do a story about Jesus, a multiple series television show about Jesus, you better get the Jesus part right. And he absolutely did that. Jim Caviezel, who did Last Temptation of Christ, The Passion of the Christ. Sorry about that, Jim. Caviezel was terrific too, but Caviezel is just a good-looking guy. I mean, I thought he was fantastic in that movie. I thought he was great. I thought it was a great movie. But the writing is so good, and the integration of actual biblical passages into the rest of the dialogue is so natural that you can't even really feel it. But see, this is The Chosen is the same as Star Trek original series or or the Star Wars original trilogy, or any of the greats. It is a labor of love. They're working on a shoestring. Everybody on that project wants to be on that project. I don't think anybody's doing it for the money. Another great example is Star Trek Continues. That is a labor of love, and that's why it's successful. And this has to have that, and it will have it. But it's got to. But anybody who works on this show has got to be a true believer. They don't have to be a political conservative, although they certainly can't be politically progressive, because their heads will explode. But they got to really believe in the project, and when you get that magic, that's the lightning in the bottle. Is that true belief, where everybody on the cast and the crew, it's not a question of hey, another 20 minutes and we're in golden time. It's like, no, we've got 15 shots to do today, and we got 4 shots left to go. It's 11 o'clock at night. We're going to finish. We're going to hear till the shots get done, and somebody runs out and gets some Wendy's or something, and you just get it done. It's everybody cares. Everybody cares, and because everybody cares, every single aspect of it looks terrific. And that's true for The Chosen, as I said. It's true for Star Trek Continues. It was the original Star Trek. That's where the magic is, and that is precisely the opposite of what Hollywood and Disney's turning out today. None of it is true believers. It's all just a cynical money grab, and somebody mentioned The Life of Brian. Even The Life of Brian, in fact, you could say almost especially The Life of Brian, was a true believer. George Harrison, if I remember correctly, basically put up the money for that. Everybody believed in it, and it was a tough shoot, and it's probably the best single piece of work that the Pythons did, and that means one of the best comedy movies ever made. I am partial to Holy Grail just because I saw it in a theater when I was probably 18 or 19, a midnight showing. I'd never heard of Monty Python before. By the time we got through the credits, I was on the ground just weeping from the subtitles. I just couldn't believe it. I was laughing so hard. But anyway, yeah. It's finding. So here's I'll go to the questions after this, I think. But here's why. Here's where the trouble is, and this is something that Dallas navigated perfectly on The Chosen, but which Vic Mignogna couldn't navigate on Star Trek Continues, because it's actually a two-part deal. You need true believers who love the project, but they also have to be talented true believers who love the project. And I felt that I don't think there's a weak link anywhere in The Chosen. As I've said, I've seen clips only, and I'd gone a long time without seeing. I saw a bunch of clips over the last week just because I just saw one. And I said, I just got to see more of this. Their choice for Pontius Pilate was really, really bold. He's almost like a character in a Wall Street drama, He's just like this snake oil salesman, like this super smooth talking, kind of playful kind of guy. Like, hey, I don't want to have to crucify Jesus, so stay out of my hair. He's bald. So everybody on The Chosen, every actor that I've ever seen, every scene I've ever seen from that series has been 100% believable. Absolutely believable. Not a weak link in it. The writing's perfect. The acting is incredible in some cases, especially on the part of the disciples and so on. Incredible. But on Star Trek Continues, on the other hand, no one on that show was in the same league as Vic Mignogna. They just weren't. the Spock they had was a level below, was an entire level below what Mignogna was doing. He wasn't a bad actor. It's just that Mignogna, there were probably, I don't know, hundreds of times in those episodes where I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, that's freaking Bill Shatner. I couldn't tell him apart. It just gave me the chills sometimes. He was perfect. The guy who they had for Spock wasn't a bad actor, but he didn't have that otherworldliness that Leonard Nimoy had. They used James Doohan's son for Mr. Scott, and he was okay. They got Grant, what's his name from Mythbusters, to play Sulu, which was, kind of a nice bit of inside baseball, but he couldn't act, and he died not too long ago at a shockingly young age, which was just terrible to hear. The McCoy got better, but the first episodes, I think they did 2 episodes or 1 episode with one guy, and then they switched him out. The first McCoy was unwatchable. The second one was just kind of okay. And then all of the supporting actors were just, okay. They ranged from okay to kind of okay. And that's because he's working on an absolute shoestring. That's where the people who are the true believers, were the people who put in, years of their lives for no pay, and their reward was, some roles in the movie. Now there are other Star Trek fan fictions, although frankly after Star Trek continues, nothing else even exists in terms of being close to that. But the further down the food chain you go, I don't mean to take anything away from them, by the way. I think there are at least 3 bridge sets now. The Mignogna set was, I think, the best. There's another one that was really good, and then there's like 3 or 2 others that are, kind of there. But that's a case where you've got somebody working for 2 years as you get down the food chain, and that's when you get into. I feel bad about saying this, but that's when you get into obese Starfleet. That's where the people who are in the movie are fans, and they stayed up all for weeks making the set, and then you've got some 260-pound 5'8" engineering officer, and it just doesn't work. Eric Blake says, Bill, you'd be glad to know that Axanar is deep in post-production. It's coming. Yes, I saw the latest update from Axanar. Axanar has the same thing going as The Chosen. I should have thought of Axanar earlier. It's a passion project. It's a labor of love, and Axanar is casting real actors. The pitch that they've been working on that for 10 years now. 10 years. But the prelude to Axanar, which came out about 9 or 8 years ago now, if you can believe it, it works because it's beautifully acted. My problem with Axanar, and it's my only problem with Axanar, is that I still will never understand this as long as I live. But because it's a really, 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 really big problem, and that is that they're trying to have starships doing dogfights, and every time you see the Ares banking and turning, it's followed by a Klingon, and the Klingon is maybe 100 yards astern. They fire their energy weapons that presumably travel at the speed of light, and they miss. They miss. Yeah. Well, how close were we when we missed? Oh, we were at long range, so we were probably almost 200 yards behind them. Don't do that. Don't do that. Next Generation was the one that really started to do that. Let's have the Enterprise swoop and bank and turn. It's like it's a ship. It's not a fighter jet. Everybody just they this is what happened to Star Trek visually. They Star Wars'd it. That whole coming in and then just stopping on a dime kind of effect. It was cool the first time I saw it in Star Wars, but it's like, no, it's not how Federation ships function. Federation ships decelerate into orbit, and they accelerate out of orbit. They don't just go. You had something unique there, and when you get to J.J. Abrams, it's just nothing but the wormhole effect on the screen, which tells us absolutely nothing. Tells us nothing. Yes, exactly. Andrew DeLay says it's naval warfare. It's not air warfare. It's naval warfare. You've got ships that are out at 26 miles, and you can miss if you're firing, cannon shots at an adversary who's 22 miles away. Then you miss most of the time until you finally get the range, and then you can start putting rounds on the guy. But that's what naval warfare is. And that's why it was so believable in Star Trek. In the original series, I've said this before, but the reason the original series combat looked so good was because they didn't have the budget to put the two ships in the same frame. You would occasionally have shots of them facing off, but you couldn't have combat with them both in the same frame. They didn't have the money. And so you always got the idea in the original series that these things are thousands of miles away, which is why I thought it worked. And you would have Kirk saying, hard helm hard left, come to 123.67, and it's like a new bearing. It's not like Sulu's doing this. I don't know why people have such a hard time with this. I should be hired as the consultant on every science fiction project in the world from this point forward. But yeah, they took everything that was unique about the original series and visually, and Star Wars'd it. Which is a shame. P7 2017 says, I always wondered where all those missed energy weapons shots went. Yeah, you should always be aware of what you're shooting at and what's behind what you're shooting at. That's probably why the Klingon moon blew up. It's probably the result of a photon torpedo spread that was laid out, 70 years earlier, and then just traveled through subspace until finally just one of these things finally hit something. Because they do tend to just kind of, go off into space. There's what was it? I'll tell you one thing that I really liked visually was the laser effect in Dune, in the first episode, when they're cutting a hole in the door, and that laser, just a thin white laser, is cutting through everything. It's like, all right, now we're talking. That's a freaking energy beam, and they didn't put a huge, glow on it, and it didn't go, and just it scared the bejesus out of me is what it did. Reminds me of that, I forget what the hell horror movie it was, but these guys are in this corridor, and these lasers come like this, and they just, cut off arms and legs, and it turns into and dices them and stuff. It was actually pretty scary. But yeah, phasers are phasers. I kind of liked on Wrath of Khan the way the phasers kind of spat out of there, but again, it got to the point that by the time you got to the J.J. Abrams version, the phasers were little turrets that came up, and they were like machine guns. I think it was Resident Evil, yeah. And now you've got, this is the problem with Star Wars. It's just so, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Return of the Jedi. We've got a Rebel cruiser and a Imperial cruiser, and they're both going like this, and they're shooting all these little turreted weapons at each other, and it's designed to look like the ships of the line sailing ships. And I sit there and watch this, and I think, don't you have any ship-killing weapons on this thing? Do you really have to come within 50 yards, then fire off broadsides of these puny little weapons? Wouldn't it be better just to have a spinal mount where you could just kill this thing at 300 miles and not even break a sweat? And so Dave Big Booty says, Dave Big Booty says that Star Wars isn't science fiction; it's space fantasy. It's space Nazis versus laser wizards. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is science fantasy. It is space fantasy. But the problem is that Star Trek, which was science fiction, became fantasized, became infantilized by this trend, So now the Enterprise is doing all of its rolls and loops and missed at 30 feet. We're not going to have that problem. We're not going to have that problem. Anyway, I got all that worked out. Oh, I do have something to show for show and tell. As you know, we've been waiting to do Story Mechanics, which is our show about telling stories and making movies. And I was going to start with John Voight, but I decided to talk to Mike Rowe first. And we had, it's a tradition I wanted to do for the show, where the members of BillWhittle.com would buy a gift that would be appropriate for our celebrity guests. So this is what I ordered for Mike Rowe. Which consists of, oh, look at that, gold-plated wrench set. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that perfect for him? I thought this would be just great for Mike, who's done so much for working people, for manual laborers, and so now that this is here, I can actually see about sketching it, because I did not know how long it would take for this to arrive. But that's good news. So, Astronerd says it can't be used. No, you can't use it. Well, you probably could, but it's 24 karat gold plating, so it's probably a pretty expensive way to turn a nut. But I'd be willing to bet you it would work. This thing back in its little cage here. I know I'm starting to look like a Roadrunner cartoon. But anyway, I thought that was really nice, and we've got the radio for John Voight from the Cowboy. Big box behind me there has got the exact model wheelchair that Gary Sinise used in Forrest Gump, so we're ready to get this show on the road. Long overdue. All right, let's go to some questions, why don't we? Steve Young AOC says the Golden Wrench is an actual Navy maintenance award. I did not know that. Oh, I wish I could find it. I saw a video, and it was physical exercises of the 4 branches, and it was obviously done by a Marine. And so the first thing you see is it's like a field of Marines, and they're all doing their push-ups. 1, 2, in perfect order, and there's DIs marching down and they're just chewing them out. I don't mean chewing these guys out. They're pounding out these 1, 2, 3, like perfect synchronized push-ups. And then the Army one was something like a bunch of kind of overweight guys trying to step their way through tires and kind of stumbling and tripping. And then the Air Force one was like this super gay black guy in hot pants, just just doing this kind of calisthenics thing. And then the Navy was no, that was the Navy was the black guy in the gold lame hot pants. And then the Air Force was like the worst group of 1980s aerobics people you've ever seen. It was just absolutely hilarious. Hey, Jay Coulter says Boomer inadvertently creates unboxing video. I invented the unboxing videos when I unboxed the box that the internet came in. Now the Space Forces weren't in it. I still have a hard time even remembering the Space Force. The Space Force will be a real force when they take casualties. Let me get all these super chats out of the way, and then we'll go to the questions, why don't we? Lapco92 with a $1, $2, $3 super chat. Thank you very much, Lapco. Sad Wings Raging with a super chat. Elon Musk cameo in your show somewhere, I hope. Rogue Trader, maybe. I'll tell you what, it'd be really great. I mean, it's set 250 years in the future. It'd be really awesome to do the thing they did with McCoy, where he's like, just age the hell out of him. And that can be done very well digitally. Just have him like, I've been king of Mars for 225 years now, and I've seen my share of space flight, and I have to tell you, you boys are just out there, just a bunch of you're just corkers. You're just the bee's knees. Now it's time to get on that trolley, and you get the idea. That'd be great. FIFO Fast, the super chat says, if you're going to spend money on this, I suggest you hire someone who can create an AI software that can turn images into a metahuman. I think that I might have already seen that. The problem is the skin texture on the metahumans. When the metahumans look good, and I've made them look good, I thought they looked real good in that interview. It's all about the eyes. You got to keep these eyes constantly in motion like real people. Everybody else they just stare out into space, and I just never believe it. I saw a couple of metahumans recently. I went on a little binge of that, and I saw two that were really good. I saw one that was really good action sequence, although he looked like a metahuman. And then I saw one that used metahuman animator, but they did a facial scan of the actor, and that was awfully good, awfully good. So I might have to experiment with. There's probably two heads on that 3D scan store that look like they could be actual people, and I think I might. In fact, I will. I'll get. I've already got the one that looks most like it, and you can get it rigged for metahumans and rigged for the the 52 blend shapes for the Apple Developers Kit and all that stuff. So I think what I'll do is I'll just do some realism tests with a scanned head as opposed to a metahuman head, which should look considerably better. I'll see if I can get that to look photoreal. Okay, what the heck was I doing here? I know I was going to go to questions. Oh, super chats. I think that's all. Got one coming up, two coming up. From Joseph J. Kosenzal. If you could only make one change to the United States at all, and that one thing could be anything, what would it be? I would create an amendment to repeal the 16th and 17th Amendments. I really think that would do it. It's just that simple. If you could repeal the income tax and return the Senate to being the seat of state power instead of being the House of Lords, I think you'd have the country back in pretty much no time flat. And then from Logan Darklighter, I'm going to go with an Everest-class dreadnought accelerates. One of these shells to 1.3% light speed every 5 seconds, impacting with the force of a 38 kiloton bomb. Sir Isaac Newton is the deadliest bastard in space. That is a great line. What's it from? Could you tell me? Because I really like the sound of that. Yeah, 38 kiloton bomb for a shell, impacting with that kind of velocity. Absolutely. Here's a super chat from Reduce Short Dark. Why not make the helmet interior a keying color like the green amber screen and remove it in composite? Also, Star Wars doesn't use lasers so much as plasma bolts. That's why they move at projectile speed versus light speed. Yes, I have no problem with the blasters in Star Wars at all. My problem is that they took the blasters from Star Wars and stuck them on the Enterprise. That's my problem. And as far as your keying help goes, like I said, we tried a number of things with the it's just, I can't explain it other than to say that the only thing that the deep fake will do is to paste an image on the top frame, on the top of the frame, and you can't put anything else over that without it. I'm just telling you, I've spent weeks and weeks of my time on this problem, and it's not as easy as it sounds. So anyway, let's go see what we got here for our questions for the day. Oh, by the way, I don't have to stay late tonight because I have it's for Mass Effect 2. Cool. I have to check that out. Thank you. I put up the How to Beat Harris Part 2 about an hour before we went on the air, maybe 2. So that's online now. And it's actually got a lot of substance in it. I talk a lot of psychology in it, so we'll see. Hopefully you guys will like it. It took me 2 weeks to do it because I had a lot of research in that one. And I used a lot of clips, but it makes a pretty compelling case for what we're seeing, and we'll talk about that more on Thursday night. Member forum. Here we go. Oh, thank you very much. WRX Dad, that's very nice of you. TSS questions for 8/26/24 by Marusha Dark. Thank you, Marusha. It's coming through now, Con. Okay, here we go. Hi, Bill. Hail, Bill. Please level with me and let me know why you seem to not want to use your contacts at the Daily Wire to get you on podcasts like Timcast IRL, Modern Wisdom, Rogan, Bridget Fedesi, etc. I have the feeling once you break into this space, you will explode. Why does it feel like I want you on those platforms more than you do? P.S. I heard on a podcast that there's a book editor named Story Mechanic. You may want to check that out. Thanks. Well, there's going to be 2 Story Mechanics because we're locked to that. This is a kind of a poignant question for me because it's worded like I don't want to do that. When Empire of Terror came out, and I talked to their marketing department, I said, can I get on all of these shows? At least Tim Pool? Nothing. You know, they didn't even put me on Mike Knowles or any. I mean, I actually have trouble remembering. I think I did like 6 minutes on Ben Shapiro, and I know the marketing person over there well. And she said, I said, look, the one person, if I could talk to anybody about this, I'd like to talk to Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson understands what the communists were. He talks about them all the time. And their marketing person says, well, we'll push real hard for that. Nothing. So it's not just a question of me not being able to reach them. I know that the Empire of Terror came out at the same time as the whole Ben Candace thing did. But honestly, I was heartbroken at the level of exposure we got. Heartbroken. It's not that I don't want to do it. And this one's a little tough to explain, to be honest with you, because not only do they have the marketing connections and the clout, it's their product. They own it. It was just, I don't know. I mean, the same thing for the Cold War, kind of same thing for Apollo 11. They're chumming it up with Elon Musk, and they're going to Jerusalem and all this other stuff. That's great, But I kind of get the feeling Elon Musk would get a kick out of Apollo 11, and I'm getting bupkis here. Nothing. So, to the degree that you're frustrated about it, I don't blame you. I am more frustrated about it, and I'm, there was a while there when it was bothering me so much. It was just threatening to derail me, because I put a ton of work into that, and I thought it was really terrific. Um, and you know, I didn't get the Jordan Peterson thing. I guess it wasn't important enough. And he works for them. I don't even think I got the Clavin show, if I can remember correctly. But yeah, yeah. You know, what do you have to do? I don't know. So I'd love to do all of these things, and I've made some efforts to reach out to some of these people, but I don't have the Rolodex that they have. Remember a Rolodex? So there you go. It's really hard, man. And it's not only hard. I can't explain it. I just honestly can't explain it. It doesn't make sense to me. I just, you know, like I said, they just, you know, these programs are terrific, and I gone to the Daily Wire Plus website, and they're not even easy to find. So I don't know, man. It's this is one thing that I determined about the colonies, right? I mean, I had this idea real early, was that, I mean, you just look at behind me here. Obviously, Star Trek was probably the single greatest cultural influence on my life. I think there's no question about that. And if Star Trek had been on HBO behind a paywall or something, I never would have seen it. This is why I think no matter what the business model is, this is the nice thing about crowdfunding is you get paid in advance. Everybody gets, you know, you try to do it for as little as possible. But if you've got the thing crowdfunded, you don't have to worry about the distribution model because you don't have investors to repay. They're paying for the product, and as long as you deliver the product, the crowdsource people are happy. And so the thing to do there is to get it as wide as possible. Just post it on YouTube or just, I want it to be seen. And that is a problem too, because, you know, everybody there were 3 channels on TV, and then there was syndication, and we all watched the same TV shows. Nobody's watching the same thing anymore. Even Netflix and Amazon Prime now have so much programming. There's just so much programming that it's almost impossible to make a cultural impact like that. Although I am highly confident that this will do it because it's so fundamentally different than anything out there, politically and in terms of the commitment to the science of it. You know, just the hard science is really, really, really interesting if you stick to it and you know something about the subject. Things like space combat become very exciting, but unlike anything that anyone has ever seen before, ever. I mean, the closest that they came to it was, oh, come on. Come on. The Expanse. And a lot of people said, oh, the space battles are so realistic. Well, they're, you know, 60% of the way there, maybe. It's tough. Yeah, it's been really hard. So if it looks like I'm not trying to, if it looks like I'm specifically trying to sit on the sidelines, I can assure you that's what it feels like. But that's not what's happening. I'm still shocked about it. Okay, topic from Marusha Dark, Lord of the Rings anime. Apparently Peter Jackson is involved in making a Lord of the Rings anime about Rohan, set 200 years prior to the War of the Rings, and it looks absolutely amazing. Here's a YouTube link. Let me just click that open. Okay, so let's have a look at this animation here. Okay. Yeah, it's very good animation. And you got the big eyes, and you got the little nose and the little mouth, and yeah, it's great anime. still looks like, you know, why? Okay. All right, you know, I'm not gonna. Okay, great. It's an animated Lord of the Rings. Roadrunner. Greetings, friend William. I just wanted to congratulate you on the upcoming second anniversary of the Stratosphere Studio. Thank you very much. Episode 1 was aired on 29 August of 2022. Hooray! May you have many, many more years of informing and entertaining your rapt audience. I'm going to go with rabid on this one. And thank you. Please keep up the great work. Isn't that nice of you? Thank you very much, Roadrunner. That helps mitigate some of the sting from this recent... from the 2 questions ago, you know, why don't you want to be on? Why don't you want to be seen by more people? It's a complete mystery. Yeah, it's tough. Guy Balo, hey Guy. Greetings, Bill. It's January 2025, and President Trump asked Bill Whittle to be head of NASA. Elon is too busy going to Mars to take the job, so he suggested you for the position. What do you think the U.S. government should do to help Elon besides staying out of his way? Also, why is it in the best interest of the USA to go back to Mars, and how would you make the case to the American people that we should help Elon accomplish this goal? Well, just I mentioned a lot of this before, but I'll just lay it out again sort of in a little more coherent fashion. First thing I would do is I would get the government out of the way, and I would get the government out of manned spaceflight completely. Completely. NASA would look much more like the FAA, where it is basically setting up essentially just not only safety regulations, but, you know, kind of navigational systems and things of that nature. The FAA maintains standards for airports. The FAA maintains the air traffic control system, the navigational aids, which have largely gone the way of the dinosaurs now, thanks to GPS. And basically, you know, the FAA's job is to make sure that commercial aviation is safe and efficient, and overall, it does a pretty good job with that. So I would get them out of manned spaceflight completely. I'd never have another. I'd never put another crew member in space with a NASA patch on their arm. That's what it's come down to me. I would take a significant portion of the NASA budget, and I would do one thing that that private companies aren't willing to do, and this is an appropriate role for the government, I think, and that is I would set up a series of prizes. Prizes are for specific achievements. In other words, if you got a rocket engine to a specific impulse of above 800, let's say, or 1,000, and you set aside, you know, it's a $50 million or $100 million prize. We're talking about billions of dollars. The thing about making a $100 million prize for something like that is that $100 million allows, as a reward, means that you can have probably 7 or 8 different startup companies that nobody's ever heard of before can go and talk to their investors and get themselves off the ground because the investors can see some form of payback on their money. It was the X Prize that got Burt Rutan to build Spaceship One and create the first commercial space flight. He was the first person ever to put a man into space that wasn't a government program. And the reason he did it was because the Ansari X Prize, I want to say it was $10 million. But he could then go to Paul Allen and say, listen, you know, we might need to borrow we might need an investment of $10 million in this or whatever. Or might be more than that, but here's something in return. And so it's amazing what you can do when you put a prize out there. I know we saw a couple months ago a couple of attempts for, you know, private landers on the moon. I believe there's a prize for that, but I would mark clear. I would make NASA back into what it was before it became NASA. I'd make it much more like NACA, National Advisory Council on Aeronautics. NACA was not a management organization. NASA's essentially a manager. NASA pulls together the contractors, and NASA flew the missions, and they were NASA astronauts and stuff. NACA was about basic research, and probably the best example of NACA is there are hundreds, if not thousands, I want to say hundreds anyway, I don't know if it's quite that many, but there's a lot of different airfoil shapes that NACA spent a lot of time on determining the flight characteristics of. They put them into wind tunnels and so on. So you already have data. You want a NACA 4207 airfoil or whatever, and you know what that airfoil will do. You know how to build it. You know its shape. You know what its lift coefficient is, a drag coefficient. You know all these things, and they've saved people so much time that they don't have to go out there and do fundamental basic research on things like airfoils, because it's been done well. I would go heavily into research, heavily into research, and since it's paid for by the taxpayer, it would be patent free. You would basically put out a prize for a super efficient, let's say, a nuclear rocket engine. You have a bunch of people building those things. Of course, you got to deal with the EPA and all the rest of this nonsense, because not many people know this, but you ask people which country had the most nuclear weapons dropped on it, and pretty much everybody will say Japan, which had 2. The United States has had 1,000 nuclear weapons detonated over its surface, and I think another 1,000 underground. I think it's been just like 996 above ground nuclear tests in the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s in the United States. So we've nuked ourselves 1,000 times above the ground, and I think another 1,000 times under the ground, and we seem to be doing okay. So take it out in the middle of Nevada or New Mexico somewhere, and set up a prize, and then when that technology becomes available, just allow other people to build on it. And I would take the money I would save from things like the ISS and all of this manned spaceflight stuff that NASA just doesn't know how to do anymore. As we sit here and record this, we're 2 days into the knowledge that my earlier prediction, didn't you say you were against grants? Asked Marusha. I said, please pay attention to what I'm saying, Marusha. I'm not talking about grants. I'm talking about prizes. A grant is here, have some money. A prize is here. Here's some money. Now come and get it. I would take all of that money, and I would do an awful lot of space probes. I'd do a lot of probes, and I would also. I'm so bloody sick of taking 7 years to get to our target. I'm so sick of it. The Psyche probe to the asteroid Psyche that appears to be metallic core of a protoplanet that didn't form, or a collision between 2 protoplanets where you had differentiation, where there was enough of a planetoid there so that the heavy metal sank to the center, and maybe something came along and clipped off the mantle and left just the core. But essentially, it's an asteroid that's made completely out of iron and metals. I can never remember what they put the value of it at. It's either $4 trillion or $40 trillion worth of material out there. So we've got a probe on its way, and I don't know when it was launched. It was probably launched a year or 2 ago. And it will get there in 2027 or 2029, because these things are just coasting, because we have so little energy left after the launch. All of these gravity assist missions, like Galileo and Juno and stuff, you launch this thing from Earth, it goes in orbit around the sun, it gets a gravity assist from the Earth a year later, which is using the Earth's rotational velocity around the sun to sling it out there, and then it coasts for 4 frickin' years. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Probes should be able to get there in matter of weeks, months at the top end. 3 months should be the absolute maximum to get to anything inside of Saturn. I'm so bloody sick of these probes being launched. It's like, oh, we just launched this probe. Yep. Well, when will we see the results? 11 years from now. Great. I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. Um, but I would, part of my research would be, you know, if we have to get a Starship launch to put enough of a second stage up there to get these probes where they need to go, then I'd put 3 probes on the same mission and just send them. Because what we've done scientifically, what NASA's done scientifically, is essentially single-handedly opened up the entire solar system. Everything we know about the solar system, and we know a lot about the solar system compared to when I started being interested in astronomy in 1972, 73. It's all NASA, with a few minor but laudable exceptions. It's all NASA. The Huygens probe that went into the atmosphere of Titan, I thought that probe was spectacularly disappointing. Didn't survive to the landing. We got no pictures from the surface. The stuff we got, I thought, was very poor quality. I don't understand why they couldn't have put a lander down on Titan. It's not like landing on Venus where you have 100 atmospheres of pressure and and sulfuric acid rain and it's 900 degrees Celsius outside. I was just completely underwhelmed by Huygens. But what NASA's probes have done now, the Japanese probe to the asteroid was good. I don't know if I see much point in the Chinese putting rovers on the moon. I think we understand the moon pretty well. It's time to go back to the moon. I would. Musk wants to go to Mars. I think I'm much better. I'm not telling Musk what he can and can't do. Musk is single-handedly dragging this species out of complete apathy and inactivity and shaking us by the collar and making us realize what we're capable of doing when we decide we want to do something. So if Musk wants to go to Mars, then by God, all power to you. But I've always believed that a much better investment is developing the moon. The moon is much closer, needless to say. There are many advantages to the moon that you don't have on Mars, and one of them is a complete lack of atmosphere, and the second one is you can manufacture things and just railgun it into space. I would, given the unlikelihood of a double planet, I'm not talking about a planet with a moon, I'm talking about a double planet. Our solar system has 2 double planets, Pluto and Charon, which is actually more of a double planet than the Earth and Moon in terms of their relative size, but the Earth and Moon is clearly a double planet. There's no other planet in the solar system that has a moon that's anything like the size of the primary, with the exception of Pluto and Charon, and neither one of those are actually planets. Andrew DeLay says, yes, but the moon is a harsh mistress, for which you win the internet for the day. Thank you. But there's so much that can be done on the moon and in orbit around the moon. And I'm not saying don't go to Mars. I'm just saying if you had a staging area on the moon, you could not just go to Mars, you go to the whole solar system. So that's what I would do if I was head of NASA. I would take the money, I would set prizes with very specific objectives. We want a rocket engine that is this efficient, or I would start doing. Now this would be an actual grant, because this is so far down the road that you really do need some firepower behind it. I would be willing to spend some money exploring the possibility of things like warp drive. I'd be willing to spend some money to at least study the problem and see if you could get to the point where you could create a measurable distortion in the space-time field. A measurable distortion. If you could do that, then everything else after that is an engineering problem. But I'd be willing to throw a little, pocket change, a couple $100 million here or there, to see if it was, whether anybody could come up with any kind of a laboratory-based scientific experiment that showed a measurable warping of the space-time continuum. I'd be willing to invest in that. I'd be willing to invest money in anything that went to the fabric of space-time in terms of either warp drives or wormholes. I'm talking about the fabric of the universe now. I'm talking about the actual structure of the universe. Because any form of faster than light travel would require us exiting space-time as we know it, or doing things to space-time that we don't see in nature. So that's what I would do if I was head of NASA. Eric Blake, speaking of Elon Musk, so let me get this straight, Bill. As you probably know and probably discussed tonight, NASA's finally bitten the bullet and arranged for SpaceX to save the astronauts currently on the ISS. We haven't talked about that, but I thought we might. The Dragon capsule will launch in September with 2 less crew members on the mission as usual. Great, excellent, everything's going well, but. The plan is apparently for the Dragon crew to rescue the marooned astronauts at the end of the SpaceX mission in February of 2025. Right, so they went up for 8 days and they're going to be up for 8 months. I'm sorry, what? Am I missing something, Bill? The Dragon capsule has 2 empty seats. It's designed for a full crew. Why not just do the rescue right off the bat? I'm sure the 2 would be all too happy to tag along and maybe even take part in the mission. What say you? The supply situation at the, people don't realize that the ISS has to be supplied. I mean, obviously people have some idea that it has to be supplied, but they don't understand how orchestrated these supply missions have to be, how much stuff has to come up, how much stuff has to come down. The space station is not something you can just take a Spirit flight to at the last minute. I mean, this thing is pre-booked for years and years in advance. I wondered about that too, to be honest with you. I just thought, what, Elon doesn't have a spare Dragon capsule? Apparently he doesn't. Because I thought, well, just, what the hell? Just launch it, go up and get them. Have NASA just add it to their tab. So yeah, I was like, I agree with you. My inclination at first was, well, why not just launch a frickin' rescue mission? And by the way, I thought the Dragon was rated to take 7 people. I was sure I saw 7 people in one of these things. Maybe it was the Artemis or whatever, some other piece of junk. You look at the Starliner, and it looks like it was built by apes. It looked like it was built in the 50s. And when you see the Dragon capsule next to it, it's just clear. One of them is 20th century technology, the other one's 21st century technology. Same goes for the suits. But yes, this is my best case scenario, because I don't want to speak until count your chickens until they've re-entered, but basically, this is such a catastrophe for Boeing. I wanted it to be a catastrophe for Boeing because their stuff, the Starliner is garbage, and we're paying for the garbage, and we're paying 20 times, 30, 40, 50 times what Musk is paying for his stuff that works. We're paying that for garbage, and I'm tired of paying for garbage, and I want to stop paying for garbage. We talked about what I would do in NASA. I would cancel Starliner immediately. I would cancel Artemis immediately. I would cancel the Space Launch System immediately. I don't care how much money we've got sunk in them. This is a question of cutting your losses. This is the sunk cost fallacy. I would stop them immediately. They're failures. They're not only insanely expensive and unbelievably overdue, but they don't work. They're garbage. Garbage. I would just simply, I'd much rather just hand Elon the money. But that's not exactly the answer either. The thing is not to hand Elon the money. The thing is to get money to the hands of people who want to outperform Elon. That's where the future is. Elon's doing just fine by himself. I would take those resources and I would put them into the hands of little Elons. I'd put them into the hands of where Elon was in 2007 or something like that. And I would get some, hello, Veronica. Nice to have people say hello. I would put the money into the hands of startup companies. I almost said upstart companies, but actually upstart companies would be what I'd be looking for, to be honest with you. So yeah, they're going to be up there till February. I think you can call it the orbit of shame. Good. The presence of Butch and Sonny on this space station for another 5 months, 6 months. is a constant reminder that Boeing cheated the American people out of billions of dollars. And they say cheated them out of it because a cost plus, for those of you unfamiliar with it, the F-35 was bought this way too, which is why it was so unbelievably expensive. You can't make this stuff up. If you wanted to put an additional bedroom on your house and you did it the way that NASA and the Defense Department buy things, is you would go to the most expensive contractor in the city and you would say, I would like to add a second bedroom to my house. And they would say, well, we can certainly do that. We have had a lot of experience building bedrooms. Great. So how much will it cost? Well, we don't have any idea. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Then the contractor says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to show up at your house. Remember, we're the most expensive contracting agency in the city. So we're going to show up at your house and we're going to start building the extension to your house. And you're going to pay us however much it costs, plus you're going to pay, I don't know what the actual number is, plus you're going to pay 20% profit. And you sit there and say, well, what do you think it will cost? Well, we don't know. Let's say it's going to cost $200,000. But so you'll do it for $200,000. No. We didn't say that at all. We said that's what we think it'll cost. Well, how much will it cost? Well, we won't know until we do it. How much will I be on the hook for? You'll be on the hook for whatever it costs plus the cost plus the profit. Doesn't that incentivize you to spend as much money as possible? Yes. And doesn't it also incentivize you to take as long as possible? Because as long as you are spending money on building this extension, I have to pay that cost plus, right? Yes, exactly. So you have no incentive to do it inexpensively, and you have no incentive to do it well, and you have no incentive to do it quickly. Yes, now you've exactly got it. That's exactly what we want to do. Well, then sign me up. That's cost plus. It's insane. It's insane. And I saw it in practice here for many, many years because the 405 freeway was widened. Gosh, it was probably 7-8 years ago now, maybe longer. And it was supposed to take 2 years, and it took 8 or 9. But here's the thing that was the evidence, right? You could consider that entire freeway project, which was done at taxpayer expense and cost billions of dollars. That was kind of a cost plus operation, which is why it took 8 years instead of 2. But they had to do this twice because because it was a double span. There is at the top of the 405 freeway, as you come up from Santa Monica and go into the valley, at the very top of the freeway, it's about 1,000 feet above sea level, there's a very high span where Mulholland Drive crosses the 405. And that span had to come down. And bringing that span down didn't mean a traffic jam for everybody, because we lived with a traffic jam for 8 years. While they're widening the freeway, they're narrowing the freeway, right? They have to narrow the freeway in order to widen it because they got to get all the trucks and stuff in there. So we have 8 years of increased traffic before this thing is widened. But it was made clear to the contractors that during the time it would take to knock that span down, you're going to actually close the freeway. So it was made clear to them that you will have to do that particular job in, I forget what the number was, for the sake of the argument, let's say it was 48 hours. We're going to close the most busy road in the world, the 405 freeway. We're going to have to close the freeway for 48 hours. And the deal that was made with the contractor was for every hour you go over that time, you are going to pay an enormous amount of money. An enormous amount of money. Because we can't have the freeway closed for, you say you're going to need 2 days and it ends up taking you 3 months. No. This is the time you've got allotted to do it. We're going to pay you this to do it. And every hour you go over is going to cost you this much money. Well, guess what got done in under the amount of time that they said they needed? Just guess what happened. Turns out that they did it in less time than they needed. I wonder why. It's a complete mystery. No one can understand it. It's an absolute mystery. God, All of our problems are self-inflicted. All of them. It's enough to make you scream. It really is. It's enough to make you just get up and scream. All of our problems are self-inflicted. This is not the future you were looking for. Marisha Dark. This is the last one for the night, which is good because we've got a novelette to discuss here. Topic, consciousness. Bill, I'm once again appealing you to talk with Brett Weinstein about any number of topics. I think you'll find it both enjoyable and valuable. Please see my response to the earlier question about exposure. Most recently, I was listening to him and his wife, Heather Haying, discussing consciousness from an evolutionary perspective. I will try to paraphrase, so forgive me if I get any details wrong. Both Brett and Heather are PhDs in evolutionary biology. In their book, they define consciousness as that part of cognitive processing that can be conveyed to the external world. Okay? For instance, I can't tell you what my body temperature is without using tools, but I can tell you what I think and feel. They then put forward a hypothesis that the collective consciousness evolved first. For instance, ant colonies or other flocking behaviors in animals that clearly don't have individual consciousness or souls, but which clearly create complex emergent behaviors. Okay, with you so far, I think. From there, individual self-reflecting consciousness and theory of mind and empathy evolved later. We see the beginnings of this in certain pack mammals and primates before we see it in humans, although obviously not to the same degree. The idea that you create the environment and the idea is that you create the environment and capacity for communication. Then individual consciousness develops as beings go from communicating with external entities to communicating with itself in a virtual conversation, sort of like building a system of train tracks before individual trains can make use of them. You might recall me asking in previous weeks, how do we know that AI isn't or can't be conscious when we don't even know what we ourselves are? Following the Descartes model, we can't even prove other people have it. We just think it's likely. In their most recent stream, this came up as Brett was talking about what he terms the Cartesian crisis and his experiences with AI, and saying that while Grok, which is Twitter's AI, does not meet the definition of individual consciousness, we are on the foothills of displaying it in that sort of collective consciousness. Link to the full conversation, in case I didn't do this argument justice. It includes some stuff I'll also be bringing up on Thursday about bots and NPCs of different kind. Here's a link. Okay. Is AI conscious? The 239th Evolutionary Lens, so I guess that's the name of the podcast, with Brett Weinstein and Heather Haying. Okay. Let's take some of those as they come. Oh gosh, there's a lot to talk about. First of all, going to the idea that hive animals like ants, that they have a group consciousness, I don't think is a fair way to describe it. I don't think ants show group intelligence. They show instincts, which are hardwired, that allow an ant society to do a number of complex things. But the reason I don't think that they display intelligence, let alone consciousness, is because ants can't improvise beyond the limits of whatever, extremely limited improvisation there is. In other words, ants can improvise a bridge using their bodies, between 2 points, and those 2 points are constantly changing. That's true, but ants can't really improvise their way around. Ants can't figure out to get on a leaf and float across the river or whatever the case may be, right? They're constrained by their instincts. My friend Jim Harding, who I learned so much from, said said that bees are never wrong. A bee is capable of complex behavior, and that complex behavior is just a part of a much more complex set of abilities that a hive has. But he said a bee is never wrong. A bee doesn't do un-bee-like things. Dogs are never wrong. You'll never see a dog do something that is undog-like. The only creatures that behave both aberrantly and abhorrently, are humans because we are capable of behaviors outside of the box. We don't essentially have a box. We are unconstrained in our behaviors, largely unconstrained in our behaviors, and this is what's unique about humans. Dolphins are extremely intelligent. They communicate with each other. They have a extensive language. So do whales, and so do the pongids, which are the apes, as opposed to the primates, which include things like lemurs and monkeys and so on. Monkey societies are complex and they interact with each other, but there's no. I know we're talking about evolutionary timescales. I'm not that naive about the subject, but monkeys have remained unchanged for at least as long as there have been modern humans, and I'm sure much earlier than that. So monkeys got to a level of intelligence and stayed there. Dolphins got to a level of intelligence, and you can actually, the dolphin case is different than the monkey case, and I'll tell you why. There's only so much you can do with flippers, and I'm talking about the appendages and not the TV show stars. You can increase the level of intelligence of an aquatic creature to the point of human intelligence or higher. But they are not capable of technology. They don't have the digits to manipulate the world, and they live in the water. There's no manipulation of the water. You can't mine underwater. You can't smelt underwater. You can't chop things down underwater and make structures underwater. Monkeys, on the other hand, are capable of doing all of these things. So instead of monkeys, let's go with chimps. Chimps are considerably more advanced than monkeys. Their social structure is far more advanced than monkeys. And chimps can do something that I believe monkeys can't do, and that is that chimps can hunt cooperatively, and one of the things that the chimps like to hunt the most is monkeys. So the chimps use tools. Chimp societies have been shown to use tools and to teach their children how to use tools. No, I'm not saying the M word because everybody makes fun of me when I said the M word. I'm going to say monkeys. I'm not going to say the other M word. You can all just go to hell. I'm not going to say it. Just not going to say it. Your bingo cards will go unfilled in for the night. So the real question is, why did the proto-humans continually change when monkeys got to a certain level of intelligence and locked it in, and then chimps got to a level of intelligence and locked it in? Hominids got to a level of intelligence and kept on going. What's that to me is the issue. Now, a lot of people who study brain evolution talk about the mind-hand feedback loop. Once you start making tools, which chimps don't do. Chimps can use tools. They can poke a slender little reed into a termite's nest and then pull out the termites and eat the termites, and that's tool usage. But they don't make tools. And that seems to have been the breakthrough, was the ability to make tools, because what happened to our proto-human ancestors was, once they started making tools, they had to burn neurons to control their hands. They literally had to burn neurological pathways and expand their brains so that they could do precise hand motion, and that hand motion grew the brain, and the brain then became more complex, which allowed them to do more precise work with their hands, and it was a feedback loop. Not many people know about this, but I find that to be absolutely fascinating. So it seems like the point where you get escape velocity in terms of intelligence is the point where you have to manufacture a tool, because the advantages of tools, the hand axe, right? We're not talking about a stone axe with a handle on it, just a piece of sharp rock held in the hand. is very useful for skinning and scraping. It's useful for cutting meat, and it gives hominids, for the first time ever, some chance of defending themselves. You want to talk about easy pickings, man. This species of ours, I sometimes think, when I think about, oh, humans have done this to these animals, and humans have done that to these animals, I go back and I think, yeah, well, for, 500,000-600,000 years, we were just about the easiest food packet on the planet, What do we have to defend ourselves? We got these little teeth. There are no incisors there. We can't do much damage with these teeth. We're not particularly fast. We're certainly slower than any other predator on the African plains, right? We got no claws. We got no fur to protect us. We don't have thick hides. We got nothing. We're just like a bag lunch. They look at us like we're Uber Eats or something. These predators must have seen these hominids. When we were up in the trees, we had some kind of. Thank you very much for that. Once again, John Eden with a $99 super chat. It's amazing. Thank you, John. Thank you. Just chokes me up every time. So we're like catered food when we come down from the trees. So. Veronica says we've got brains. Yes, but we didn't have the brains when we came down. It was the ability to manufacture tools that started this very rapid upward feedback loop. And when you look at the tools from each of our proto-human ancestors, you start back at Australopithecus and Homo erectus and all these others. What you find is that, and Neanderthals, by the way, surpassed modern humans in a lot of these areas until modern humans caught up. But it's the ability to make a tool that causes the brain to grow neural pathways that then get handed down to progeny. It's not this kind of adaptive evolution where traits are retained, because that's not evolution. But those people that could make stone tools, or could at least knock two pieces of rock together to get a sharp edge, those people who had that much brain power were selected for, and that trait was passed down, and then you just incrementally went up with a standard deviation over any particular member of the species at any given time, and those guys who were on the right side of the curve were able to make better tools, and that better tools allowed them a better chance of surviving. And then as things started to go uphill for humanity, because we were down to about, I think they said we were down to like 30, 40,000 humans on the planet total. It was damn near went extinct. Then as you start coming out of that bucket, then these tools become useful to defeat other humans. And then you get the real accelerant of progress, and that is warfare. We are... I've said this many times. It's one of the most amazing things about the species. I love humans. I think they're. I'm a big. I've discovered it late, but there's a entire subgenre of science fiction called HFY, and it's humanity. F yeah, it's all about how awesome humans are. I love it, because I'm definitely one of those people. Not one of these puny Earthling kind of guys. I think humans are phenomenal. I'm damn proud to be one. So we're omnivores. We eat everything. There's nothing on this earth that we don't eat that's biological. We eat everything. We don't eat rocks because there's no nutrition in rocks. Otherwise, we'd eat rocks too. But we eat everything. We eat fungus. We eat insects. We eat mollusks. We eat mammals. We eat birds. We eat fish. We eat everything. There's nothing on earth that humans don't eat. We eat plants. We eat vegetables. We eat everything. We eat everything. I mentioned funguses, right? Yes, everything. We eat it all. That's one of the reasons why we're so successful and why we inhabited the entire globe, because we can eat nothing but fruits and nuts, or we can live in the Arctic and eat nothing but meat, raw meat and fat, and we're good to go. So because we're able to eat anything, we don't have natural limits on our territory. You can't take a penguin and have a penguin colony in Africa. But you can do it with humans. And so the entire world is our habitat. And when you start developing these regions, and when you start this brain-hand coordination thing, then you start being able to go from building tools to building weapons. And if you can build weapons, then you don't have to build a city. all you have to do is build enough weapons to take over the city. And you get into all kinds of other things with, you get the idea. And you invent agriculture, then you get the industrial era. And the industrial era did the same thing, It's much harder to machine a gear for a stopwatch than it is to make a farm implement. And it's harder still to manufacture a computer chip than it is to manufacture a gear for a stopwatch. And this is the kind of feedback loop that has been driving humanity to astonishing achievements, which is what science fiction's all about. It's like, okay, we've done an awful lot of stuff. What can we imagine? Because if we can imagine it, we can do it. That's pretty much been the case. Back to the original Star Trek here. It's widely discussed many, many times. But so many of the things on Star Trek that were absolute fiction, like a, pocket communicator. I have one right here. And sensors in space can determine where I am on the planet. And I have a tricorder that can record, pictures and sounds, and also navigate things and measure my own heartbeat, for example. It's a medical sick bay. It's in my pocket. Because guys like Gene Roddenberry had the vision, and all the writers for Star Trek, and the props masters and Jeffries and all the rest, they thought about it, and they thought it'd be cool to have this, and the next thing you know, it's a direct result of it. It's not a coincidence, It's not a coincidence that the cell phone does everything that the Star Trek communicator does. The people that built the cell phones went into engineering because they like Star Trek. And time and time again, especially James Doohan, would hear that I became an engineer because of Mr. Scott. I've decided to build things because of Mr. Scott. I thought the tricorder was cool. I thought the communicator was cool, and not only was it motivating to them, it showed them. And this is a weird sort of thing to say, but it showed them that it could be done, and it showed, maybe more to the point, is it showed them how useful it would be to have something like this. You're talking about 1966. There are no cell phones. There are no cell phone bricks. You have to go to a landline and dial a number to connect somebody. The idea that you could just pick up something and go, "Hey, Jim," "Yes, Spock," we don't even think about it today. It was inconceivable in 1966. It's just absolute magic. Where are you? I'm over here. Oh yeah, I can see you. Okay, great. That just didn't happen. It didn't happen until it did. And so I'm not disagreeing with these people, Marusha. I didn't get enough of the podcast to disagree, and they certainly seem to know what they're talking about. But I don't think that. I mean, you said here that their definition of consciousness was. Again, I'm not holding you to their arguments. I'm just saying their definition of consciousness was that it was part of cognitive processing that can be conveyed to the external world. Doesn't that kind of presuppose? Doesn't the supposition of cognitive processing? I mean, isn't that the secret sauce we're looking for? I mean, it says it's a form of cognitive processing that's can be conveyed to the external world. I clearly don't understand what it's trying to say, because I'm not being flip here. I'm just telling you. I'm obviously misunderstanding them, because cognitive processing is, to me, that's the entire ball of wax. That's the Holy Grail. We don't know, at least as far as I know. I'm not aware that the humans know how they are able to exceed the boundaries of instinct. Instinct is explainable. Birds don't have to be taught how to make a bird's nest. They just know how to do it. And the reason they know how to do it is because it's hardwired into their brains. Because the original birds built very, very simple structures, and over time, birds went their different ways, different species of birds, and they remembered how to build simple things. And then as they got into their new environments and their bodies changed and their beaks got longer or shorter, whatever the case may be, they started making different kinds of nests We had a hummingbird nest outside our house. We still have it. It's been occupied twice. This last winter, it had a little baby hummingbird in it, and which is interesting because it was up right underneath it was on our Christmas tree lights. They built this little tiny little cocoon, looked like a little tiny little crucible, like something you'd use to smelt a little bit of gold in, and it was hanging underneath a white rafter, and the hummingbird came in there and laid an egg, and the baby hummingbird was there, and we'd see a little beak picking up. Then all of a sudden we'd start seeing like these brown spots on the ceiling on this white wood beam above them, because the little hummingbird babies, when they start eating things, they kind of just stick their butts up in the air and just kind of poop on the ceiling. They just squirt it up. And maybe not dinner conversation, but we thought it was amusing that a bird was crapping on our ceiling. And then the hummingbird just got stronger and stronger and starts, his feathers are not even there. He's just looking around. Then as his feathers start to come in, he starts jumping around, and then there'd just be moments when he'd just do this, and then he'd sit there for a day, and then he'd do this some more, he'd sit there for a day, and his feathers would start this. And we were watching him, and and I remember, neither Natasha and I saw him actually fly for the first time, but she was there about a half an hour before he flew, and then saw him in the bushes. But for at least a week, maybe two, this is a helicopter term, but I watched this little baby hummingbird, and he was getting light on the skids, He was pulling enough collective to get light on the skids. He's like, not flying yet, but you can feel it. If you've ever flown a helicopter or been in a helicopter, before you take off, the thing gets light on the skids. You got just enough collective in there to just almost make the helicopter weightless. You're still on the ground, but you can feel it. You're light on the skids. And this goes, then finally just flew off. But I digress, as usual. So that's instinctive. They know how to build that nest. They don't have to be taught how to build the nest. Monkeys have instinctive behaviors. They have complex societies. They have rules. The babies are not allowed to eat anything. The babies get the milk. If a baby is seen eating a banana, if somebody hands a baby monkey a banana, the adults will immediately come and steal it away from the monkey. And if the baby keeps eating that banana, in other words, if the baby knows that it's not supposed to be eating it, baby knows that it gets whatever scraps the adults don't want because it gets the milk. But if a baby keeps eating food, people keep feeding it to it. Usually it's a matriarchy, of course, the monkey societies, at least the ones I have in mind are. Then they'll kill the baby because it's breaking the rules. So why haven't they advanced? Why haven't chimps advanced? Why are chimps locked into being chimps? We were locked into, so clearly there's got to have been some Rubicon that had to be crossed. And I see it as do you have enough native horsepower, like Australopithecus or Homo erectus? Do you have enough horsepower to be able to envision making a sharp edge? That's about the limit of your imagination. I don't think that Homo erectus was working on calculus or anything like that. I think he was just smart enough to think, if I strike this stone this way, I've done it before, I dropped it or whatever, I saw it done, then I can make this sharp edge thing, and with the sharp edge thing I can scrape animal hides, and I can cut meat, and I can defend myself against panthers. And then here's an idea, if I put a stick on the end of this, just to make it, I don't even know what the actual suggestion was, but once you put a stick on a stone axe, you don't have a stone axe anymore. You have leverage now. Now you don't realize it yet, but you've just invented mechanical advantage, because the amount of force you can put on a stone axe that's on the end of a stick is a lot greater than the amount of force you can put just a stone axe you had holding in your hand. And if you put a longer stick on it and you swing that axe with both hands, it can actually do some damage to the things that are coming after you at nighttime. So you get the idea. So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that nothing that I saw there in your synopsis to say that consciousness is cognitive processing that's applicable to the external world it's the cognitive processing that's the issue. Do chimps clearly, when you get to the case of Coco, the gorilla that learns sign language, there's clearly some kind of cognitive processing going on because it experienced emotions, and famously, some of those were apparently overstated, but according to the story, Robin Williams spent some time with them and they really hit it off, and when Coco was told that Robin Williams died, it signed tears and stuff. So I believe that's pretty close to true, and that means that gorillas and chimps are capable of expressing emotions, but dogs express emotions, and dogs are not self-aware. Self-awareness appears that there's some evidence that it exists in chimps and gorillas. They can look at a mirror and not see some other chimp or gorilla, can on some vague level recognize that it's themselves, but they are not. I think this is the breakthrough. They're not capable of enforcing their will upon the environment. They're not capable of changing the environment and changing their behaviors in order to improve the environment. You don't see chimps making shelters. You don't see them building things. You don't see them constructing tools. Chimps are constantly at warfare with one another. They're incredibly violent. This talk about humans being the killer apes is just ridiculous. Chimp societies make us all look like like Little House on the Prairie. They're just continually killing each other, and some of these chimp societies were just nothing but roving bands of murderers. So, not saying we didn't do that. I'm just saying we didn't invent it. So why didn't the chimps start grabbing sticks? Sometimes, I don't know if I've ever seen a chimp beating another chimp with a stick. I may be confusing this with the beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey. But as usual, Clark and Cooper got that right too. That was the turning point, right? That's when we stopped being animals. Was when Moonwatcher realized that this jawbone of a tapir or whatever it was could make a club. It's a weapon. It's a tool. He made a tool, made a weapon. And with this club, he's able to take the rival hominids and pound the snot out of one of them, kill him, intimidate all the others. Now they got control of the pathetic pool of muddy water that they were fighting over. And in his just joy and glee at having finally beaten the snot out of old, Half Fang of the other tribe who he's hated his whole life, he's just pounded that guy into the ground, and just out of sheer exhilaration, he throws this weapon into the air, and then snap, it's a nuclear bomb in orbit around the Earth. No break in that spectrum. At no point was there ever a change. The change was the first tool. Everything after that's just refining the jawbone, basically. So anyway, I don't know if that was of any use to anybody, but I love these kind of conversations because they make me think about things, and I like thinking about things as a general rule. So there you go. Just make sure Clark was a math whiz here. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. Might have missed a super chat. Let me see what he. And that John Eden is just astonishing. Here's one. Let me see. Mershadark, are you familiar with the stoned ape theory that suggests that monkeys ate mushrooms with DMT and forced early human evolution, including tool use? Jordan Peterson talked about it on Joe Rogan. Well, I'm careful about how I put this. Hallucinogenics are described as mind-altering, and they are. Under the influence of hallucinogenics, humans experience things that that they don't experience when they're not under the influence of hallucinogenics. I know that's just a circular argument, but essentially it's my let X equal X. Hallucinogenics show you a completely different world than the world that we're used to. And I've come to believe that we have evolved away from hallucinogenics because hallucinogenics make everything look very beautiful and connected, which is tremendous experience and very useful. But if you were to spend your whole life with brain wired for LSD, for example, you would be sitting there looking at the pretty colors, the fiery colors on the tiger as it ate you alive. What our brain chemistry has evolved largely to filter out an awful lot of stuff. It's an incredible how much we filter out. Because if we didn't, we'd go, well, I was going to say we'd go nuts. Maybe we just sit around and look at how beautiful everything was every day and how nice things smelled and how pretty the sounds were until we got eaten by tigers. I really think that's basically it. They are they provide insights that transcend regular consciousness. I know a lot of people think it's the kind of insights that go, hey man, you know what, if we were like a giant, all this universe was just like an atom in the thumbnail of a giant, not that kind of insights. Genuine new way of looking at the world and seeing things in a way that doesn't, yeah. Gumming says, yeah, we'd all be Democrats if we were all hallucinating all the time. It's exactly, it's really true. There's a lot of truth to that, actually, a lot of truth to that. You have to filter this stuff out. If you had that kind of brain chemistry naturally, the kind of brain chemistry that you get when you're under the influence of hallucinogens, you don't survive. So those proto-human ancestors who were having the time of their lives were eaten by the groovy-looking panther that walked into their pad at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they said, dude, those claws are like, they're just so rad. Famous last words. So I think that hallucinogens had something to do with it. The thing about hallucinogens is that they make you want to have more hallucinogens, but they don't. I'm not aware that they've provided any practical advantage. What they do, however, is what I mentioned on Star Trek. They show possibilities that don't exist now, and because they show you a possibility of something, it at the very least makes you think about it. What is that line from? I forget the name of the band, but that's a great line. It's like, what a fool believes he sees. It's not just seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. That's an incredibly powerful line. What a fool believes he sees. I guess Michael McDonald, I think. So what these mushroom eating apes figured out, Doobie Brothers, was it? No, great. What they figured out was if you eat these certain kind of mushrooms, you will see things that don't exist. And I suppose on some level, this would open up possibilities that the blinkered reality that we live in may not allow. But I'm absolutely convinced that that we have evolved over time to filter out all the stuff that was not essential to survival. That we are survival coded machines. That our consciousness, our unaltered consciousness, is designed to give us an evolutionary advantage for success in the world. We are the things that we're real good at are are all selected for survival. We evolved from tree animals. This is one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the colonies to maybe bring this back to wrap it up where we started from. I'm going to have a race of intelligent aliens, but they're going to be completely non-technological. The idea of going into the air, let alone going into space, is anathema to them. They didn't evolve from tree animals. They evolved from land animals. They're quadrupeds, and the idea of falling or being in the sky of any kind is mortally terrifying to them. They have no desire to go into space. They have no desire to fly. We like to fly because it gives us sensations of, well, we used to fly. We used to fly from tree branch to tree branch. If you ever watch monkeys maneuvering through the trees, they're damn near flying. It really is kind of amazing. They're going to be like the Kukri in Traveler, if anybody's ever seen that. So they're going to have tremendous ability with mathematics, these aliens, and they're going to have ability to vocalize their musical capabilities and their mathematical capabilities. They're able to produce sounds like orchestras. They can completely, perfectly mimic any sound we make, and all of our music is as child's play to them. But when they see things like acrobats or jugglers or anything like that, they are absolutely 100% transfixed. They simply cannot believe that living creatures could do what we do. They're absolutely amazed that we stand on two legs. Just watching us walk is miraculous to them. So we have our strengths. They have their strengths, and most of stealing this right from Traveler, most of their artwork consists of smells, various waxes that melt at various temperatures, and it's, group gets together and has this this amazing smell-a-thon and all the rest of this cool stuff. Anyway, there is, and these creatures, when I say they're not technological, they are. They make their own shelters. They have their own language. They have clothes. They have ornaments. They're basically at the tech level of primitive humans. And the thing that's so amazing about primitive humans is, talking about how come the chimps didn't go any further, or the real question is, how come some humans went further than others? Hunter-gatherer societies have been unchanged for 200,000 years. They didn't get they were able to make tools. They got that far, and they were able to refine their tools, and their bowmanship and their tracking skills and all the rest of it is phenomenal. I say phenomenal, but if you look at a compound bow that you use in like Olympic archery competition, that's a long way away from even something as simple as a bow that a native might make. Those things got multiple flexing parts. They've got cams on the. They're just they're just how do you develop? Just take that as an example. The bow itself, bow and arrow, is a really amazing invention. The idea that you could damage something from a distance, ranged weapons, very important. And every human society on Earth got that. They all got ranged weapons. I don't believe there's a society on the Earth, primitive society on the Earth, that didn't get the bow, because the bow is simple, but there's not bows lying around on the ground. Somewhere somebody, independently on all these different societies, had to realize the elastic properties of certain kinds of wood, and put two and two together and realize that they could launch something, as long as that elasticity was strong enough. See, the thing about a bow is that you have, in order to make an arrow fly someplace, you have to put force. You have to apply work. You have to physically move something, and that requires strength. And while it takes a lot of strength to draw a bow, what most people don't realize is that a fair amount of the strength in the bow is in stringing the bow. I mean, just bending the bow enough so that you can string it is imparting an awful lot of potential energy into that structure that you've just built. Yes, you have to pull it even further, you have to stretch it even further, but just warping the wood enough to get the string over the top of the bow means that you've got a potential energy machine even before you draw the bow. And they found skeletons and recovered skeletons, especially of like British longbowmen. And at first they couldn't figure it out. They're British longbowmen, because for probably 300 years that was the definitive ranged weapon. It's the English longbow. And for generations, this is what's so hilarious to me about fantasy movie making, because what they'll try and do is they'll say, okay, this actress that we've got who's going to play this heroine is obviously not big enough to beat this guy with a club, so we'll give her a bow and arrow. What they found about the bowmen was that they were completely lopsided creatures. Their upper musculature was so well developed, but especially their right arm and their right shoulder, because they had spent hours and hours and hours a day at the gym doing one exercise only, and the amount of strength it took, just raw physical strength that it took to fully draw an English longbow, was beyond what the knights could do. You got these guys on horseback in armor suits, and they're swinging their swords and their clubs and their maces and their and their morning stars and their whatever hacking device. You got halberds and all the rest of this stuff, and they're doing this, but none of them had the strength, just the physical strength to draw a longbow. And so it looks easy, but the point I'm making is it's actually harder to draw a bow than it is to wield a sword or an axe. P7 2017 says those iron armored suits could weigh 800 plus pounds. That can't be right. There's no way they could weigh that much. I don't know what a suit of armor weighed. I'd be willing to bet it might be as much as maybe 150, 200 pounds, but nobody's getting up off of 800 pounds of weight. 800 pounds? How can a human walk in 800 pounds? Oh, for the chargers. Okay. Never mind. Because the horses have their own armor and all the rest of it. And yeah, it's a pretty fat guy. I bet those horses saw these guys coming with their armor, and they probably looked at each other and said, "Oh, great. We've already got to carry fat ass around on our backs. Now he's going to bring all this iron with him on top of it. That's just fabulous. That's just wonderful." Horses just saw these knights coming out and looked at each other and just said, "FML," I'm out of here. FML. No way. I'm not doing it. I'm not carrying Lord Fat Ass plus his entire body weight in armor. Yeah. Anyway, that's all of our questions, and we're at the 2.5 hour mark, so I'm going home. I'm beat, but at least I don't have to do a show afterwards. Usually I have to edit a show and post it. I've already done that today, so that's good news. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. So the show's made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com. You probably know that by now. Thanks to all of our members and for all of your endless patience, perseverance, and keeping the cause going. Very grateful as always. And that'll do it for this show. So we'll say goodnight to our friends on YouTube first. We'll see you guys on Thursday for the Stratosphere Lounge. Until then, we'll see you later.